let's say you improve at, reducing your stress. Does it mean that you'll also improve at, reducing your anxiety?
In general, the more, like, we could even be talking about the more sleep we get, or the better we eat, or the more we have satisfying, connections with people.
Licensed psychologist and author Tamar Chansky. Chansky's work focuses on overcoming anxiety.
She's a licensed psychologist and the founder of the Children's and Adult Center for OCD and Anxiety in Pennsylvania. She's the author of numerous books on the treatment of anxiety, including the popular Freeing Yourself from Anxiety series.
Is there like a best way, or like, some of the best ways to reduce anxiety?
It's wonderful to just know that you can be that observer too. And that's really the idea of thinking in twos.
Can you talk a little bit about just maybe the history of stress anxiety? Why do people feel stress anxiety? Is it biological? Like, talk to me about that.
Wow, I love that question, starting by zooming out, because it's important to to understand the why of this, and also just to appreciate that this is a very stressful and difficult time for for humans, as you said. So this is actually, too, Fong, the way that I will explain anxiety and stress to little kids or adults, just talking about how we were built for a time when what is the saying, either we went out to get lunch or we would be lunch, kind of thing. So our survival was really a moment to moment venture, different from today for most of us. And so we have a nervous system prepared to mobilize us into, fight or flight, or into freeze and shut down, if that is what is going to help us to survive. And it's not nuanced. These are kind of the rudimentary systems we have are, just any sign that we're of a threat. That's what we shift into automatically, which is wonderful for our survival. If there were threats, that if we were threatened by something that we really would have to run for our lives or fight for our lives. But when it's more the stresses of uncertainty, financial stress, relationship stress, school stress, worrying about the climate crisis, things like that, where there's not an immediate threat, where it's adaptive to go into fight or flight, something's happening. There's information that is concerning, that we might need to do something about, but not like that. And so, sorry for the long answer, but where that leaves all of us is in a place where we're getting kind of bombarded from within with a lot of feelings of, like, I don't feel right, or something's wrong, or I got to get out of here. Just that stress feeling uncomfortable. So, and thoughts like that too. And so that happens in the course of, sitting in our offices or desks or whatever it may be. And there's not, like I said, a kind of an immediate threat that we would need to get out. So the other very difficult thing about anxiety and stress is that when we have those sensations, we feel like something's wrong with us. Why am I feeling this way if I'm sitting talking to a nice person? Why am I feeling this way if I'm sitting in class, sitting at my job, even watching TV? Why am I feeling this way? When we have that feeling that something's wrong with us, it spirals, we escalate into more fear. And that's how we can be, just in a protracted state of feeling stressed and anxious all the time. So I do like to teach people about the fight or flight system, so that when we get those sensations of, we feel out of breath, or, thoughts start racing and it's hard to hold on to one, or we feel fidgety, our hearts, beating fast, that we can say, right, that's a fight or flight. Do I need that now or do I not? It's not like something's wrong with me. It's just at the wrong time, essentially. So, yeah. So, long answer to say, and especially, as we have all just been, through these last few years of the first phase of the pandemic, if you will, of having, a lot of isolation and just kind of change in our mobility and our routines, that, that has made that whole process of a lot of anxiety certainly, escalated greatly. And we weren't kind of talking to people that might discharge some of that. We weren't going out and doing things that might, discharge some of that. And if I can just add one more point to this answer, if we went through a difficult time and, maybe we would have a recovery time from that. Let's say someone had a car accident or something like that, a real specific stressor that, we might kind of think to ourselves, yeah, that was really upsetting. I need some time to kind of get back on my feet. And it would be helpful to have a different expectation that, maybe I'm going to be more tired, or I'm going to, not be as productive or something because I'm in this recovery time. We've all been through these difficult years and there's been no recovery time. It's really kind of the opposite, that I think as things started to improve somewhat, or change anyway with the pandemic, that the expectation is sort of catch up and, get back to what we need to be doing. And that I think has had, again, a detrimental effect on people's mental health, when you don't feel like you can just rush and do things and, act normal and be at full capacity. What's the question we say? What's wrong with me that I can't do that? Whereas if we were saying to everybody, hey, human beings don't reset quickly. We're amazing. And we get through so much, but one thing that we don't do really, there's a cost. We don't reset quickly, and it's going to be very helpful to kind of adjust expectations to allow the healing and the restoring to get that bandwidth back, to get that energy back. So I have a lot of feelings about this.
Yeah, absolutely. So from what I'm understanding, back then our ancient ancestors had more immediate threats and stressors, such as, a saber-toothed tiger chasing after them, and that stress is there. Now the stress has kind of evolved in modern day, where it's more of like external things happening, but we internalize it amongst ourselves, but we still feel the same stress that our ancestors might have felt, right? Our body processes kind of like the same way.
Exactly. And if we don't know that, that's just how we work, we get, that's, people can have panic attacks. What's that? What's that feeling? Why is my heart beating like that? What's wrong with me? Is it can kind of spiral from there, unless we know why it's happening, and that it's happening is something that we can impact, by naming. I think there's a kind of a saying, I don't know who first said this, but you've got to name to tame. If you can name what's going on, like that's my stress reaction, that's my anxiety reaction, just being able to put a stamp on it to say what it is, that's going to help us to down regulate a bit, because we're not in that like alarm mode of wondering what's wrong.
Absolutely. So you mentioned stress, you mentioned anxiety. I feel like a lot of people lump it up together. What's the difference between stress and anxiety?
Yeah, with stress is more a feeling in the moment, I'm going to say, that when, something's going on and we feel like we have to respond quickly to something, you're driving to work and there's, the road is closed, there's road work or something, and you can't take your normal exit and you are going to be late for something important. Immediately you feel stress, probably, unless if you don't, tell me how you don't. I would like to learn. You'll start to get that signal from within, the heart racing and things like that. And so that is the stress reaction in that moment, thinking ahead of, what's going to happen. My boss is going to be so mad. This is the second time I've been late this month. They're probably going to fire me. What am I going to, it was so hard to get this job. So when it starts to do the what if sort of ahead, thinking of, the future, that sort of thing, the web of consequences and how, there are going to be problems. That's more the anxiety piece, thinking ahead like that. And the thing, with anxiety, when it's maladaptive, let's say some of that is what we can handle. But, a lot of people wake up with nothing's happened yet, but the mind has a mind of its own and starts to invent these things. What if I am late for work? What if people are not happy with what I did? What if, my friend is mad that I didn't text them back yesterday? Just sort of getting those scenarios going that, again, if we could say, wait, that's my anxiety. Is any of this what I really really need to tend to now? Do I think that that's something that is, really going to be a problem? Let me sort of fact check each one to see if I need to, or do I just looking at that say, no, I'm just stressed about the morning because that's a big day. Let me make my coffee or, do some meditation. That's what I'm going to do instead.
So one is in the moment, one is more thinking about the future. So if you, let's say you improve at, reducing your stress, does it mean that you also improve at, reducing your anxiety, or are they like exclusive, and they're two different things?
That's a really good question. I think that, in general, the more, like, we could even be talking about the more sleep we get, or the better we eat, or the more we have satisfying, connections with people. All of that would be a buffer for our stress and for our anxiety, so that I think anything that you do to down-regulate your nervous system, give it what it needs, give your body what it needs, you're more likely to have that bandwidth to have a choice. Maybe we're always going to have an anxious or stressed response first, like, oh no. But as we give ourselves more of what we need, as we learn kind of how anxiety and stress work on us and see that we have choices, we might more quickly go to the second hypothesis or something, or explanation, to say like, okay, there's nothing I'm going to text my boss. There's nothing I can do about this traffic. It's okay. So really, I say to people, just to give a takeaway, think in twos. Your first response is going to be probably that, stress response, or that anxious response, thinking ahead. Think in twos. What's sort of the more realistic way that you want to look at the situation, and, make a prediction about what's going to happen, or just kind of come back to the moment and take care of what you can. So, I think in general, though, just to say, all these things happen so quickly for us. That's kind of one of the amazing things about human beings. It's just, you don't have to work at making yourself anxious, it happens. These thoughts, you have one, you have 50. That's just kind of how it works. But what is so powerful is, again, as you sort of name what's happening, we can pivot. We have to practice that. It's not a natural instinct. A lot of people feel bad for being anxious. Say, like, again, the what's wrong with me question. And, no, that's just the tendency. We have big brains. We want to understand. We want to predict. We don't like not knowing. So just, know that that's what's going to happen first, but then cultivate this second response to, step back and make a decision, sort of if I take away all the like exclamation points of this, it's like, this is a traffic jam, 10 exclamation points, or this is a traffic jam, period. One is going to feel a lot better than the other.
I see. So it kind of reminds me of a book I've read called The Power of Now. If you ever heard of it, by Eckhart Tolle.
Somewhere on my shelf, right over there, I have it. Yes.
Oh, nice. Awesome. So, is there like a best way, or like, some of the best ways to reduce anxiety? Because one of the things that Eckhart Tolle talks about, I remember from the book, is, you are more like an observer, of your thoughts, and you're not your thoughts. And so you kind of take a step back, and you're kind of like sitting on a bench, and just like people, you're watching your thoughts go back and forth, and you're taking that bird's eye view approach. It might be easier, but I know that's kind of like one approach. It's more like mindfulness. Are there any other approaches that might be beneficial, or is mindfulness kind of like, the best one?
It's wonderful to just know that you can be that observer too. And that's really, the idea of thinking in twos is to notice first that anxious thought, and then to have, another way of thinking about it, which might be just to say that is just a thought that's going through my mind now. That's, it's not reality, or I have choices about what to do. Drawing on other traditions, I think it's a Buddhist tradition idea of the handshake intervention, if you will, which is when you have a thought, to just say hello to it. Hello, have a seat. There's a seat over there. I'm kind of busy right now, but have a seat over there. Maybe I'll get back to you. But it's the same kind of thing. I work obviously with people for whom anxiety is, really debilitating, really getting in their way. And so the brain gets used to doing things. It can get used to doing something new. So all these ideas that we're talking about today, the first few times you use them, they may feel like, what's happening? Is this really helping? But the more you practice them, it becomes a more automatic response. But, for folks who are just having so many intrusive thoughts, at once, I suggest some kind of campy ideas, like singing the thoughts, or putting them in Google Translate and having them, in a different language, because again, the thoughts came from our, anxiety reaction, but they cause more anxiety. It's sort of like brainwashing in a sense. And so to interrupt that cycle, hearing levity or difference helps to break up that pattern. And so, hearing the worry in a different, in a different voice, so to speak. And with kids, I'll say it in with an accent from a cartoon character or something like that. And it starts to do what Eckhart Tolle is, talking about, to just allow you to not have that limbic, emotional reaction to the thought, but just to hear it as words. but sometimes it helps to, to have kind of a different way of getting there that draws on levity or something like, or difference, something like that.
Hmm. That's awesome. That's funny. While you're talking about that, one thought actually came up is what if you put into like a AI tool, of Morgan Freeman's voice, and it like makes
You
you so
do that?
soothing and calm, Like, oh,
That
it's
is,
not bad.
that is awesome. I bet yeah, I am very new to all of that technology, but I'm absolutely going to check that out.
Mhm. That'd be good.
Yeah,
So,
no, it's true because just, we are it's kind of like I will say to kids if they're watching, like a Disney movie or something, if they mute it, it just you take away the music that convinces us of something bad happening. It's just a message, and that's really what we're
mhm,
trying to do. And so, we might think, well, if I'm having this thought, why would I do something like to try to change it? It must be important that I'm thinking that. And that's where really understanding that, anxiety is information that those thoughts are ideas that generally are not accurate about what's going to happen. What do they sound like? It's like, what if fill in worst case scenario, happens, something like that, which is not usually what does happen. And so just knowing that we have permission to do things like that, not listen to the thoughts or, shake their hand and kind of direct them to the aisle, change the sound of them, that's all, being a very responsible human being.
mhm,
Because when our anxiety is quiet, that's when we can really think about what we need, what we want
mhm,
to do. And so it's not, it's not that that's where our wisdom comes from. That is more of a knee-jerk reaction, trying to protect us, but it's not really what the facts are of the situation. And so whether you're 5 years old and you're going to talk about your worry brain telling you these things, or you're an adult and you want to think of the voice, some other voice saying that to help you get distance, or just observing, all of that is really essential equipment in a sense to manage just what goes through our minds.
mhm. One thing that I've really noticed in myself is with stress and anxiety, I could get caught up in this loop, like you talked about, where you're not even aware that you're feeling stress. You're like in this constant loop and anxiety, and having the self-awareness to recognize when I'm feeling stressed or anxious helps me then deal with it. Especially, I recently got this Whoop band, and it monitors my HRV, and it gives me a chart throughout the day of the times when I'm feeling very stressed, like a high stress zone above a certain point. And then I could map out, okay, well, what happened during that time that I felt stressed, right? And so it's like, if I'm aware of it, if I understand it, then I can work to reduce it. But I just think about how many people aren't aware, that they're feeling stressed. How many people are not aware that they're feeling anxious? They're just in this constant loop,
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And having an external way of letting that will probably help you to tune in more to your physical signs of that. And then you might not even need the external monitor as much, in a sense, because it's like, oh, right, I did I've been holding my breath. We haven't really even taught, we've been sort of talking more cognitively about being an observer of thoughts and what to do with, thoughts that we have, but certainly learning how to do just micro nervous system resets when we notice, that we were just feeling stressed, or maybe we feel some physical signs of that, to just have your way, whatever it may be, to have a slow inhale and especially a nice slow exhale, and watch your shoulders drop. I sit in session with people and, I'll say, oh, that was a good one. I saw your shoulders drop. Because think about it, when we're, just kind of taught, we're not, we're breathing enough, but we're sort of breathing shallowly. But when we exhale, the shoulders drop, that every exhale lets the nervous system know that we're in a safe zone. We just wouldn't do a long exhale with a saber-toothed tiger, on our tail. We wouldn't do it. Yeah. And so, for adults, we can think about, just taking a few slow breaths and, a luxurious exhale. For parents, I always say, if your child feels comfortable with a hug, or you could do this with a friend or partner, hug until you feel the exhale and the shoulders drop. That's just, that you've kind of, now you're set in a different wavelength within, your body.
Mhm. Absolutely.
And it
So,
feels good.
yeah. So I heard a few things there, about signs of stress, having tense shoulders, maybe not breathing. Are there any other signs of stress that people can identify?
Yeah, people will talk about, certainly the racing heart, that they'll feel their heart pounding, or
Mhm.
their, hands, their palms sweaty, stomach distress, headaches, just muscle tension. And, again, people may think like, why do I feel like this? All I did was go to work today. It just, the mismatch of what is going on the inside with what's going on the outside, we wouldn't think like, right, my body was acting as if I was, in a race for my life or something. I had to get that report done, and my body was tense all day. And so you can come home and then feel like, right, you're just as if you had run a sprint or a marathon or something like that. So again, it's really little things can be so helpful, that it would be wonderful if we all had time, and I wish we did, but I don't. And I don't know about you, Feng, but to have an hour or whatever to just to really take a yoga class. I don't really have that, but I do have 5 or 10 minutes in the morning and at night to stretch. And sometimes in the middle of the day, I just do something to stretch for a second and feel that exhale. Any little reset you're going to find by the end of the day is just a little bit better. Then those little resets start to feel good, and then you want to do them regularly. So you get up and you're in your body, you stretch, you look out the window or something, like, or if you don't have a window, you go outside for a minute. They're just these little patterns that we get so much more from. We get so much more than the time investment that they take. And so just being aware of that idea and working that in just here and there in your day, you just feel so much better. We weren't meant to just sit and work. We were meant to move. And that's, something sometimes we have to really schedule in or, kind of keep our mind on that. It doesn't, it would be easy to lose time, lose track of time and not move for a lot of the day.
Mhm. Absolutely. And that's one thing I've noticed. First of all, I do exercise Monday through Friday. I like to weight lift, but I had lower back pain. I had sciatica last year, and I figured it was because I was sitting too much. And so not only that, not only did I experience physical pain, but I was more anxious, more stressed, less energy. And so I decided not to sit anymore while working. And so I got a standing desk, like a treadmill desk. And I noticed that my stress was reduced, a lot less anxiety, more energy, no more lower back pain. And so, that's one thing I think about is like, how can we incorporate things into our life, like a walking desk where not only are you still able to work, but you can also get some exercise in and move at the same time. It's like not two birds with one stone.
Absolutely. That's wonderful, effective overlap.
Mhm.
Yeah. And even, if we, we don't have that, or we don't have a job where we can do that, but just knowing that it's a good idea to get up and move. That's great.
Mhm.
A lot of these things, that's the thing about, a lot of these ideas are free,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
it's not the culture to do those things. So like you said, just kind of cultivating those habits, that's a really great thing that we can do, and just think small,
Mhm.
because then it sells itself because it feels good. Then we want to do it more. So if we can just start somewhere, that's going to be helpful.
Mhm. Absolutely. So let's kind of transition to children. We talked a lot about just macro, but let's kind of dive into more how we can reduce stress, anxiety amongst children. But how would you describe the modern state of a child right now? Because in my perspective, I feel like they're struggling, especially with COVID being locked up for 2 years and not being able to really interact. I think interaction could be really helpful, to reduce stress and anxiety. But unfortunately, a lot of kids were locked in their homes, and that was, all they really were able to do is maybe go to their phone, and interact that way. But I don't think it's really the same thing. So, I think from your perspective, what is the state of modern children?
Mm, such a big question, Fong, and heavy. but also, so I'll say some heavy things about it, but whenever I see kids, I'm trying to think where I was, this just yesterday. Anytime I see children, you just feel good. Children out and about, they're doing goofy things, they're noticing things, they're a lot of times happy just out there. So I think for me too, I have to remember like that is in kids. So I want this picture to be very hopeful, because it is, but at the same time, the way that we're going to help kids the most is recognizing what you're saying is just how stressful things have been, how different things have been for children, and frankly, just missing out on years of development. Our development, is still happening, but it's slower. With kids, it's happens faster. And so really, kids did miss that interaction, the sort of social skills, learning that comes from that, the connection, the substitution of technology, whether it's games for little kids or social media for teenagers. And so I think again that and the Surgeon General was just talking about the declining mental health of children being the crisis of this time. And so that's, that hits hard But I think, again, if we can look at some kind of overview ideas and some very practical in the moment ideas that we can be of great help to change that declining trend. And so the overview, I think, just realizing how much pressure kids are under with having missed school. And it's not a neutral thing. It's not like, well, okay, now you're back in school. So it's like, okay, it's good now. No, all the depletion, just again, as we talked about earlier in the conversation, there's not been that recovery, really. It's just sort of like pop back into, what was. And so I think, having the flexibility of expectations for students, just really thinking about the power of seeing each child and connecting with them where they are, that's how they're going to, that's like watering the seeds. That's how they will, continue their healing process, and their growth process is not by, just this is no, teachers have and parents have my absolute highest regard. They've been the heroes for kids during these difficult years. But when we see things like, math and reading scores dropping, dramatically, over these years, the temptation might be like more content. We just got to get more information, to these kids. But really, it's about connecting so that the child has what they need. They have more bandwidth to learn. They are regulating their nervous system. So, eventually things catch up, but the priority is not the math skills as much as the emotional regulation that will eventually lead to those math skills, if that makes sense. So that's the big overview. Is I just hope that, folks can trust that it's really the much better investment to look at what children need emotionally now, that's going to be the better investment, addressing that, throughout the day, giving those opportunities for them to feel connected and seen and connect with their friends. Then it is just sort of having more content accelerating to get back on track. And the micro, really dovetails with that, is creating community in schools, really creating community in classrooms, helping kids to really feel like they belong, that they do belong, that they contribute, that they are, it's important that they're there. And that feeling of connection is the antidote to all we have been talking about up till now, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we feel a connection, anxiety, stress lowers, anxiety lowers. We're not thinking about those other things as much. We're sort of feeling like we have that home base within. And so, just the resources for that, again, if we can just allow the time, all these things are free. Having, kids check in with the teacher, having kids check in with each other, recognizing that so many kids lost loved ones during the pandemic, or, went through, big financial changes or housing changes, whatever it may be. And so, they're starting at a place where, fortifying that home base feeling within is with saying good morning, which is what, this is why, teachers did all of this. It's just how we got through. But don't stop now. That those same person to person resources that are free, that really don't even take that long. That's still, it's going to feel good for us as adults to do that. And kids are just going to get that settled feeling within, then they'll be more ready to learn. But it probably has to happen refreshed throughout the day as much as possible. So I feel very hopeful because I know we all have those resources, and the more that we kind of recognize that, and it's a two-way street. We give our regulation to someone to help them regulate. We feel more regulated. We feel more connected. It's, it's just this wonderful community, global human, project of humanity that we can all do.
Mhm. So how could parents be more involved in this process, of being able to help their kids reduce stress and anxiety? I could imagine that by them doing it themselves, and it would help reduce their stress levels and
Yeah.
not pass it on to their kids, right? Because if you're stressed as a parent, kids could probably be able to sense that. So besides being able to model that, how else can parents be
Yeah.
involved in helping their child reduce stress and anxiety?
Yeah, sure. So certainly, and modeling it messy. We're not, it's actually, kids get very interested when their parents say something like, you know what, I need to take a second, or I don't like how I said that, or I think mom needs to go, sit for a minute and cool down. It's like, what? But that's real life. So that's kind of modeling it messy, that, maybe we're like, I can't believe that you left okay, I'm going to do a reset. I'm going to do a do-over. It's
Mhm.
fascinating. It's just like, wow, what just happened? An adult, wasn't right immediately, but it's very powerful because then kids can do that too. So I just
Mhm.
want to add that about the modeling, but certainly, for parents, knowing the power that I think of it as taking a slightly longer route through their child's emotions ends up being a shortcut, that I'll explain. When kids are upset, we want to fix it. We want to say, like, no, it's not a big deal, or like, I'll help, I'll take care of it, something like that. And meanwhile, kids are still feeling what they're feeling. They might not even know what they're feeling. And so coming in with empathy, to say, you're really upset and I want to help you. I want to talk to you. I want to help you. We're going to figure this out. Just doing that one
Mhm.
step, even if you do end up being part of the solution. Parents are often part of the solution, and that makes sense. But there's
Mhm.
a little bit of a pause there where you can connect with your child and they will feel that, protection and connection. And, that you're saying that this is something that you can work on together. That's very valuable because you're instilling a sense of collaboration, but also, confidence within your child, confidence that they can do something about how they're feeling, and also that their feelings are visible to you and valid to you. That is really important. So yeah, whether it's something happened at school with another kid, or, the teacher got mad, or they didn't do well on a test. If you can think about, rather than going in with the problem solving about that thing, just connect with your child first. They may have ideas once they know that, you're kind of creating this calm space together. You might ask questions instead of, giving solutions. And that's just part of a collaborative process that you say, that sounds really hard. What's the hardest part about that for you? I want to help you. And I think I also, empathy with sharing appropriately, kind of normalizing that you might feel that way too, or you might have felt that way. So that kids don't, have that feeling of there's something wrong with them, or no one else feels the way that they do in a very, loving, supportive way. So I would say, if you can take the time to empathize rather than kind of solve the problem, that actually you'll feel better, your child will calm, be able to use your calm to feel calmer. And the whole getting to the problem solving will probably happen faster, because you have two regulated people working on it.
Yeah, I think that's very powerful. I love that, because I feel like as parents and even people, we just like to solve things quickly. And sometimes we don't want people to feel that pain. We just want it to, we think that we're doing them a service by just fixing it quickly, so that way the pain can go away quicker. But there is a lot of value in being able to, take it slow and steady, and being able to empathize, collaborate with them, empower them, to solve their problems, but knowing that you're there to support them, and that takes time, that takes patience, but it seems to, build a stronger bond, than just fixing it quickly.
Exactly. And, then your child learns through those collaborations, how things work. Feelings are waves, they come and go, or they have options. A lot of times kids will say, well, I'm gonna tell the teacher that I'm just really mad at them. And, you might feel inside like, don't do that. What you might cultivate a response instead is to say, well, that is one option, and we can, put that over here, and let's think about a few others, because that is problem solving, right? It's, if we get locked in very quickly to an idea of how to fix something, parents, adults, kids, and if it's just going to really behoove us, if I can use that word, to think of a number of options before we, jump into one. And that's just, again, how we slow the process down, but we can be supportive of what our kids are saying, unless it's going to hurt somebody. Obviously, then we've got to, draw lines, but be supportive of that problem solving, to say, well, I like to think about a few different things to try and how they would go before I decide what to do. What's another way we might, respond to that.
Absolutely. So I noticed that you also wrote a book on helping children overcome negative thinking, negative thoughts. So what inspired you to write the book?
Yeah, so, I had been working with kids with anxiety, wrote a few books about kids with anxiety, parenting kids with anxiety. And I was hearing kids who had a slightly different tune, if you will, that, the kids with anxiety, it was more, what if, or oh no, like what's all the kind of catastrophizing and spiraling into that kind of more uncertainty thinking. And I was hearing, a different tune, which was kids, sometimes the same kids, but, other kids as well, who were more convinced that things weren't going to work. It was sort of airtight that, no one likes me. It's not like, what if no one likes me? No one likes me, things never work out for me, it's not going to work, and there's no point. Things like that, just that depressive kind of thinking, where what happens often, talking about parents not wanting to have their children be in pain, the typical response is to kind of correct that to say, people like you. No, it's going to
Mm.
work, and I can be that parent sometimes, even though this is what I work on, all day. And I have to kind of remember, like, sit with the pain and look at the thought process, to then I wanted parents with those, kids with that kind of thinking style to have other options to respond with more, again, cultivating flexibility, labeling what's going on, helping kids to think of other possibilities, learning about patterns, that happen in our thinking. And so, whether that's, I have some illustrations in my books. And, one of them, I think in the negative thinking book, is what I call the sum shaker. It's like a salt shaker. I said I was campy. It's like a salt shaker, but it's a sum shaker, because with all or none thinking, that's the antidote, is to think of the exceptions to that. So kind of emotionally, we feel like nothing worked today. Today was terrible. Nothing worked. Like, okay, yeah, I get that. I can feel that way some days, too. What was the time that you felt that the most? That kind of thing. And then, were there some things that were maybe okay, or something, so then you start to create, maybe some people were nice, even though that one person who was not nice, I get it. That can really, affect how you feel in a day. But let's use a sum shaker, and is there, more information there to learn about the day. So these kinds of, there's another drawing of the not yet machine, where kids feel like if they don't know how to do, math, something new in math or something like that, they're never going to be able to get it. And helping them to get that idea of, things are hard at first and you just haven't learned how to do it yet, but we all can have that. I'm not going to ever get it, but what about that not yet machine? What would you want to kind of put in there? Right. Do you think, in a couple of days, you'll know how to do this? Do you think it's more next week? Or maybe this one is a hard thing in math that's going to be difficult to get, but other things you can get. Again, it's with empathy, connecting with how bad it feels when the mind just sort of shuts down options and says nothing's good. But rather than correcting it, kind of looking at the information together to see what else is there, so that you can draw different conclusions.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's really, I love those ideas. The sum shaker, and also the
Not
not
yet
yet method. So how much value, I hear a lot from mindset gurus. They talk a lot about the power of positive thinking, taking something that could seem negative and spinning it to something positive. Like, no, this stress is good for me because, it teaches me how to persevere, and then you let it go, and then you take on another negative thought, you confront it, you spin it to something positive, and then you let it go. So is there any value in that, and is there any like science behind doing that method and some of the other things that mindset coaches talk about?
My immediate reaction to that is that maybe if our baseline stress level were not so high, something like that could be possible. But I don't think that's most people most of the time. So it ends up, the whole toxic positivity thing, it's like it ends up feeling like a disconnect more than, something inspirational to think that way, because, whatever people are going through is very real to them. And it's not something that you can just kind of flip like that. And so I feel so optimistic about people and what we can do for ourselves and for each other. But the approach that I would take, I do kind of use this mantra that, the opposite of negative thinking isn't positive thinking, it's just possible thinking. When you have a kid who's just so unhappy about how things went, you don't need them to be happy. You need, that would be great, and that happens sometimes, and that will happen for them sometimes. But what you need is for them to not feel stuck and convinced about, what their negative thoughts are telling them. So I do, I don't want to be a killjoy, but I do get concerned that, that ends up kind of alienating people, making people who are already feeling pretty bad about what's going on with them and themselves feel, even more dysfunctional. But it's not accurate. It's really that the expectation was not a helpful one for them or most people. So I guess, yeah. I take it a different way, but that's maybe in the nuance of those approaches, there's overlap in how we think about things. But I just immediately think, so many, it's understandable. For instance, for parents will say, I just wish he would say something positive. I can't take it, and then I think, right, this is really, it is I call it a table for two. It's a two-way street. It's a table for two. You want your child to be more flexible, resilient, optimistic. You also have to do that too, to say what's happening is this moment right now. And I do believe, keep working on this, my child will learn how to not get stuck in their negative thoughts, but it's just this moment right now. That's not what's happening.
Awesome. Wow, I can't believe it's already been an hour. I could talk to you forever, Tamara. This has been so valuable. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. Where can people find you?
Yeah, such a pleasure talking with you. And let's do it again.
Yeah, let's do
Part
it.
two. Yeah, I feel like we both have more ideas that we would definitely want to put out. But yeah, so folks can find me on my website, tamarchansky.com. And there's so many, I've been blogging for a lot of years, and most things that I write about are evergreen. And so, parenting ideas, managing anxiety, negative thinking, procrastination, things like that, you can find searching the blog posts on my website, and also on Instagram, Tamara Chansky @TamaraChansky PhD.
Awesome. Sounds good. So yeah, thank you everybody for listening, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye.
Thanks.